What's up, everybody? We're here. I'm in a new undisclosed location. We haven't got the studio thing set up yet, but this is where I'm at. All right. Um, Brand new time. Oh, all right. Good to see everybody in the chat. I love when someone's like, finally, you get to see a live one. See, when we move the time around, someone's going to get to see it for the first time. And that's the beauty and the joy of what we're doing. I just had to move because the NSA was on my trail. So I got to set up these other things real quick. But we're going to bring Lee Camp on here in a second. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Holly Horn is our moderator. I believe Blaze Silver Wolf is there as well. So like, share, subscribe, put this out on your social media. I think it's just Holly right now. All right. And thank you to everybody watching on my YouTube channel and on Lee Camp's YouTube channel. If you're watching on either one of ours, please go over and subscribe to the other guy's YouTube channel because all those little algorithm things help. I forgot to set up the rock fan. That is my fault. We're going to set that up right now. I just was surfing and then I had to get in the shower. It's been very chaotic. I haven't surfed in forever. It's so cloudy and dumb here. It's been cloudy in LA for 6 months straight. Like it's a nonstop. Yeah, it's brutal. It's like I'm living in fucking Seattle or something. Although Seattle's probably 75 and sunny today, and we're 62 and cloudy. It's June 1st. It's not right. It's not right at all. So we are now on Rockfin. Thank you, everybody, for joining on the Rock. We're going to send this out on the social media. So everyone will join us. All right, here we go. Like, share, hit the like button, share this out. Okay, we're on the Twitter, we're on the StreamYard. All right, let's do it. Blaze Silverwolf is here. All right. A fucking cloud fest. That's what somebody put. It's 72 and sunny in Portland. Portland is sunny and warm, more sunny and warm than Southern California. That's a crime. That's a crime. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Government Secrets episode 124 with the two most censored comedians in America, Lee Camp and Graham Elwood.
Hey, man. Hey, how's it going?
Good, buddy. Excited for the new time slot?
By the way, I want to let everyone know this is not the new time. We are sticking with Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern for at least another 2 weeks. However, there will be extenuating circumstances during some of those 2 weeks.
Today was all me. This one was all me. We talked last week. Wednesday's the new time slot. And then I was like, oh God, wait, I got to move Wednesday. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to have time for this. So
how'd the move go?
It was fine. I don't own much. So I'm able to just kind of slide in and out of places pretty easily.
Nice.
So the other place I was in was kind of a sublet situation that wasn't really.
You really just have the bag on your back, and it was the 14 Labradoodles, right? That's it.
I don't know what a Labradoodle is, but I'm sure I've got 14 of them.
Although I do have bad news. If you move because the NSA was onto you, I think they just follow your most valuable customer card for the protein powder you get. So wherever that card moves, they just follow that.
It's like this guy's so dumb. He just orders vegan protein powder to be shipped to his front door of wherever he's at. So we find him.
He keeps moving around every week because he doesn't know why people are outside in his bushes. Well, we just go to each address he gives to the protein powder people.
Yep, that's pretty much it. I just cracked open a new thing of protein powder today. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. So we'll get this figured out. I'll get this new situation set up to I'll get back to, because I hate this lighting. I hate the way this lighting looks. I don't like it at all. So we're going to get back to the better, that smooth ring light, even lighting with the blue background. It just makes me.
Yeah, the sparkle is not in your eyes today, Graham.
No, I look like a hobo. I look like a.
Well, I think you look fine, but there's no sparkle in your eyes.
There's no sparkle in my eye because it's not sunny. It's like I can't.
Most people tune in for the sparkle.
They do. And then here's a big thing of hand sanitizer that's over my shoulder. I'll move that.
It's a good background. I assume you paid extra for that, right?
Yeah. Well, since I'm a sellout to Big Pharma, they just send me these. You know,
it's actually a filter you can just apply on StreamYard. You just click giant hand sanitizer background
right over your shoulder.
It just pops up.
It just pops up right there, and it just goes wherever you go. It's pretty sweet. I think my segment should go first.
I was going to say that too.
Yeah, mine's a little dark.
I actually, for once, I chose a lighter subject.
Yeah, I know. You sent me that earlier today. I was like, wow, Lee's just decided to.
It's every once in a while I like to do this. It's all genocide. Last week was torturing a man by putting fire ants up his ass or whatever it was. So every once in a while, I remember I did. It's still connected to the destruction of the American dream. But I remember several months ago, I did how the tipping culture in the U.S. is based on slavery.
Right.
And you know, so I like to have one of those where you're like, oh, it's this fun little thing that Lee's gonna screw with, but then I relate it to, you know, genocide or American dream destruction or whatever.
Yeah, that is great, and since we're, you know, in the middle of a heavy labor movements, the WGA is on strike. I just voted today. I'm in SAG-AFTRA to authorize striking for my union.
Really? So the writers are still on strike.
The writers are still on strike, and then SAG-AFTRA starts its negotiations June 7th, and our contract is up June 30th. So, but they're not automatically going to strike. They wanted to go into the negotiation with whatever 90% of our membership says we want to strike. So I voted for that today, and I thought, so there's a heavy chance that SAG-AFTRA will join the strike, which is, I don't know, it could mean the strike drags on for 6 months, or it could end it quickly because the WGA is 11,000 members and SAG-AFTRA is 160,000 members.
I bet you if they're joined together, I bet you it ends it quickly.
Yeah, I think it will.
There's a lot of productions that are continuing without writers for the moment, and they would be fucked.
Yeah, if there's no on-camera talent, there's nothing they can do with it. With right now, what's happening is they're still in production because there's scripts that they technically bought before the strike,
right?
And then they're having producers or whatever punch up the scripts on the set. That's how they're getting around the strike.
I've gotten around the strike by having no writers ever because I don't have the money, or really anyone wants to. So
yeah, I'm doing that. I don't have money for writers either. I barely can afford giant hand sanitizer bottles, Lee. So all right. So we'll get, so what my point up with the strikes is, I was like, I want to talk about a labor related thing. And then this is just similar to like just typing in CIA operation. I just typed in coal crimes and then coal crime massacre, and a bunch of them came up, because I know we've talked a little bit about this, because I know Eleanor did a whole documentary about this.
Hard Road to Hope, if anyone wants to see that. But we did do a segment on some sort of gun battle that happened.
Yeah. Well, here was another one.
Yeah.
So I will do, this is government secret segment number 1. The coal mining's massacre that America forgot. the mountains of southern West Virginia are riddled with coal and bullets. So do you have the image to put up there?
Yes.
I looked at all of these when I typed this in there, it's like the CIA operations, all of these different ones come up. There's all of these like coal disasters that the companies covered up. I mean, like I had so many to choose from. There's literally like, doesn't that look fun working in a coal mine in the 1900s? And since we're in the middle of a labor movement renaissance in America, this was all a part of first of all, there was a lot of coal labor battles in the 1920s. That was part of a bigger labor battle in the 20s going into the 30s. And then when FDR got elected, he put in a lot of legislation to support workers. So this was a gunfight in downtown Matewan, West Virginia on May 19th, 1920. On one side, the heroes, a pro-union sheriff and mayor. On the other, the henchmen of the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency. So this is kind of classic corporate behavior of hiring. That we've heard about the Pinkertons, and now this is another. They hire their own thugs basically to go beat the crap out of union workers.
And also, like, we should remember that part of the reason corporations hired their own thugs is this was a time in America where there wasn't like just armies of police waiting at the wings to do corporate bidding like they do now. Yes, there were police and U.S. police originated from slave patrols, but there wasn't quite these like armies. So instead, the corporations would just hire these thugs. And the police in the area would like look the other way. I mean, they probably half of them probably were police that were moonlighting or something. But
right, yeah, you bring up a great point. Is now they don't need secret security because the cops just do it.
yeah, they just call the cops.
Within 15 minutes, 10 people were dead, 7 detectives, 2 miners, and the mayor.
2 miners or miners?
Miners, like
children?
No, coal miners.
Okay. Well, they may have been both. They may have been miners.
They very easily could have been. I wouldn't doubt it. They're just like, all right, kids, get down to those coal mines, and hey, the cops are coming. Go fight them. So 3 months later, the conflict in West Virginia coal town had escalated to the point where martial law was declared and federal troops had to intervene. The reality of the coal miners' armed standoffs throughout the early 20th century was much darker and more complicated. So again, this is why it's one of the reasons it's called the coal massacre that was forgotten, is there was a bunch of these where the coal companies and the miners got into it, and usually there was like private cops and whatever, and it got ugly. So here's what happened. So the coal industry was essentially the state's sole source of work in West Virginia and other coal states. And massive corporations, they built homes, general stores, schools, churches, and recreational facilities in the remote towns near the mines, which was great for propaganda to say, see, we're giving people these wonderful lives. The reality...
And they would import a bunch of people. Like, they'd be waiting at Ellis Island to grab folks and say, you want a job? Yeah.
Yes. And what they didn't tell them at Ellis Island is this is going to be like feudalism.
Also, do you like inhaling like rocks like into your lungs? Because it's gonna be a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, it's not just the actual mines were awful, which they were. The company houses were abysmal, wages were low, and state politicians supported, of course, this is going to sound shocking, the politicians were bought off by the coal company.
What? I thought that was more of like a past few years thing.
I think this might have been the only time I don't think it's happened before or since, quite honestly. problem persisted for decades and only began to improve once FDR passed the National Industrial Recovery Act in 1933. So a labor historian wrote, Hoyt and Wheeler, firing men for union activities, beating and arresting union organizers, increasing wages to stall the union's organizational drive. So that's another thing they would do. People were like, our wages are awful. We want all these. They had this laundry list of things that they wanted, including fair housing. So they just go, we're going to give you a little bit of a raise. And enough of the workers would go, hey, we got a raise. I'm not going to, let's not rock the boat. Right.
Right.
And then they did a systematic campaign of terror, which produced an atmosphere in which violence was inevitable. The mine guards of Baldwin Felt's detective agency repeatedly shut down miners' attempts at unionization, with everything from drive-by assaults of striking miners to forcing men, women, and children out of their homes. And oh, gee, weird. People felt like after all of that abuse, they had no choice but to react to the violence with violence.
Right. Yeah.
This is the standard, like, stirring up trouble. This is the American corporate state and the American police department coming up, and I poke you in the chest and poke you in the chest. And when you finally crack me in the mouth, I go, oh, Lee Camp's out of control. He's a violent lunatic. It's like,
yeah. It's it's like when the cops harass you and harass you and harass you, and then you say, get off me, and they go, assaulting a police officer.
Yep. Resisting arrest. The combination of perilous working conditions and miner guard tensions led to a massive strike in 1912. So this is all the stuff that led up to the 1920 massacre. In right near in that region of West Virginia where Matewan was, it sits on the southern border with Kentucky. After 5 months, things came to a head when 6,000 Union miners declared their intention to kill company guards and destroy company equipment. When the state militia swooped in several days later, they seized 1,872 high-powered rifles, 556 pistols, 225,000 rounds of ammunition, and large numbers of daggers, bayonets, and brass knuckles from both groups.
Wow, these folks were serious.
Yes. So that was in 1912. And then around between, I think, 1917 to 1919-ish, there was a little distraction called World War I. But as soon as World War I ended, the feuding and the fighting picked up again. As wealth consolidated after the war, which is another reason why Americans called it World War I was called Wall Street's War.
Wars are always good for enriching the already rich.
Yes. The already rich did great while regular people came home.
Yeah.
I know an Irish guy whose grandfather came home and he didn't talk for 3 years after World War I.
Jesus Christ.
Didn't talk. Just was shut down. This was when I was in Iraq and there was a pro golfer, the Nicholas, what's his name? Daniel Faraday, I think. He's the sort of like comedic commentator for CBS Golf or whatever. And there was a bunch of golfers. This was
I know a lot about golf. This is the game with the sticks.
This is the game with the sticks. Absolutely. Okay. That's correct.
Yep.
That's correct.
Got it. I think
are
there trees involved? Do they play with trees?
They just try to hit the trees. They try to hit the trees.
It's the only sport with like an alligator and geese involved, right?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. They're part of it. They're scorekeepers.
Yeah.
Yes. An alligator and geese. Fantastic understanding of pro golf league. So after World War I, when the wealth consolidated, the Union then found themselves in the crosshairs. Following World War I, there was an increasing concentration into fewer hands of industrial corporate power, says the historian Rebecca Bailey. Unions were actually considered like detrimental to them simply because human labor is one of the few cost items that could be manipulated and lowered.
Yes, this is also that genius of realizing that human labor can be exploited while other things cannot.
Yeah.
it was also Jeff Bezos's brilliance. He discovered that delivering things, you can't make the trucks go beyond a certain speed because of speed limit laws, but you can work people until they literally collapse and die in your warehouses.
Yeah.
So it's the humans that can be pushed to the brink.
Yeah. And if one of them dies or whatever, we'll just get another one. As the rich mine owners got richer, union organized strikes became a way for miners to protect their salaries. Leaders like John Lewis, the head of the United Mine Workers of America, insisted that workers' strength came through collective action. In one successful protest, 400,000 United Mine Workers of America went on strike nationwide in 1919. Uh-oh, that's bad for power.
When 400,000 dudes with big bellies and thick beards and a willingness to die get together, shit goes down.
400 strong.
They want. Yeah.
And while coal is still used a lot, back then it was like one of the sole sources of fuel for trains, for any sort of industrial anything. So they shut down the country's industry.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something America doesn't want to do anymore, even though France is doing it all the time.
And it was just coal and 100,000 hamsters on a wheel. Those were the only two power sources at the time.
Oh, we all remember the huge hamster strike of 1918. That was big.
The Pinkertons killed 13 hamsters, which was really shocking to the country.
Hamsters were viewed as violent at that era in time because they were just very mean, angry. But so the strike in 1919 was successful, and they got higher wages and better working conditions. The wages did increase during this time, but they tended to rise more slowly in non-union areas, and the union itself struggled throughout the 1920s. For capitalists, it was a battle for profit against what they saw as Bolshevik communism.
Yeah.
Workers were, of course, just fighting for their rights as humans.
I love how that's how the U.S. just in general, the propaganda always says, "Oh, it's communist," and it's a bunch of workers who are like, "Hey, could we have an hour off on the weekends where we're not deep in the bowels of the earth breathing coal into our lungs?" And they're like, "Fucking communists!"
Communists.
No, I just wanted an hour.
Yeah. Can I not have to drink my own urine during my break? Shut up, Trotsky. They just.
When all the canaries have died, is it okay if we come out of the mine for a few minutes? Commie. Yeah.
Better dead than red. All right, thanks. So this is what was leading up to that. So back to what happened in Matewan in May of 1920. There was in response to a massive union organizing effort in the area, local mining companies forced miners to sign yellow dog contracts that bound them to never join a union. Which that's what America's all about, right?
Is that legal?
I guess kinda. On May 19th, Baldwin Felt's agents arrived in Matewan to evict miners and their families from the Stone Mountain Coal Company housing. So that's the other thing. Right. Oh, we're going to give you housing. You don't play ball, you're on the street.
Right. We can take your house away from you. Also, they're paying them in store credit at the company store. So, we will, if you owe debt to the company store, then we'll call all of that debt on you. You'll owe it to us all at once. They got a million things they can do to these people.
A million ways to screw them over. And so that was May 19 when they started kicking people out of their homes. It was a normal day on the job for agents. The detective agency founded in 1890s. It was a company that did law enforcement contracts for railroad yards and other corporations. And its main job was suppressing unionization in coal mining towns.
But they were detectives. They were detecting ways to beat that coal miner's wife so that he goes back to work. Yeah.
Yeah. we're going to throw your kids on the street. And this is the thing with power. They get away with so much stuff, but then they don't realize when you take everything away from people, you have just mobilized.
Yeah.
You've just mobilized an army, because if I've got a job and kids to feed, I'm less likely to maybe cause problems. If you kick me out in the street and I've got nothing, I'm coming for you. That's what I'm going to do.
Unabomber, not a lot to lose.
Nope. Didn't
He's
really.
got a bigger, he lives in a bigger residence now than he lived in before.
Yes.
He has workout equipment. He's got televisions.
He's got food. He's got healthcare. He's got a really nice system in place right now. So, the same day that they were throwing people out, the town of Matewan was teeming with a number of unemployed miners who came to receive a few dollars, sacks of flour, and other foodstuffs from the union to prevent their families from starving. Whether the men also came in anticipation of taking action against Baldwin-Feld's agents is a matter of debate. I would say yes. Either way, the visiting miners had the rare support of pro-union Matewan police chief. Well, that's rare. Usually stories like this, it's like the police chief is in bed with the coal company, but not here.
Right.
According to one version of the story, the Baldwin-Feld's agents tried to arrest Hatfield, which was the police chief, Sid Hatfield, and the town's mayor, Cabell Testerman, right? Those two were very pro-union. When they tried to arrest the mayor when he tried to prevent the evictions from taking place. So this is the audacity of this private cop company.
Detective. They were only detecting, Graham. They're like metal detectors, but for minor unionizing
and freedom. When the mayor defended the police chief from getting arrested, he was shot and more bullets began to fly. In another version of the story, Hatfield initiated the violence. Oh, let me guess who started that story. Yeah. Either by signaling armed miners stationed around the town or by firing the first shot himself. For Bailey, the latter seems more likely scenario because the agents would have known they were outnumbered. Bullshit. And if Union miners and Hatfield did initiate the violence, the story of Matewan is darker than simple underdog tale. I call it, well, even if that's the case, then they were so denigrated that they finally got pushed into a corner and said, all right, now we're going to go. The union benefits from the moral high ground as victims, regardless of whether they initiated the violence. Yeah, I would agree with that. And as a former coal miner in West Virginia, and remember that the union said, if you got mule kicked in the mines, you were in charge. You could lose your job over it. If a man got killed, you could be replaced. And making situation worse, a founding member of the contempt for outsiders. So there was a contempt for outsiders, and for miners in the region, the locals had a reputation for being violent and unreasonable. So this is a horrible stereotype set by, this is in SmithsonianMagazine.com.
Well, define unreasonable. Like not willing to budge from the tiny little crumbs they are asking for.
Yeah. And it was a stereotype that this historian said that it set the stereotype that they were used to feuding, and they were a bunch of people who didn't care about anything but a gun and a bottle of liquor. That was propaganda, but these people were being abused and reacted.
There's no talking to these people.
I know.
They're like, could we have 26 minutes for lunch break instead of 12? And they're like, they're unreasonable.
Yeah. Listen to this. While miners shot at their opponents, private planes organized by the coal company's defensive militia dropped bleach and shrapnel bombs on the Union headquarters.
Yeah, one of the few times. There's been a few, though, but when America has bombed itself.
Wow.
There was the Move bombing, a couple others where America has bombed itself.
The battle was stopped when federal troops arrived on the order of President Warren Harding. There was then a court case where the Baldwin Felts Company tried to bring charges against Hatfield, the mayor, and he was acquitted by a local jury. Felts brought a conspiracy charge against him, forcing the police to appear in court one more time. On the stairway of the courthouse in August 1921, Hatfield and his deputy, Ed Chambers, were gunned down by Baldwin Felts agents. They killed
just the detective agency. That's
they killed the mayor.
Jesus Christ. What we were detecting whether these guns work.
Right. And then the national media sold a lot of copies portraying the area as a lawless land where mountaineers were inherently violent. And there was this romanticized version of events creating an Old West type image of Appalachia. This obviously didn't lead to widespread public support for the miners and their struggle. So it was again, the media came in probably being paid by the coal companies to say, oh, these crazy Appalachian hillbilly miners, they're all violent and nuts. And they went crazy.
The media was working for the corporations.
I know. I can't. I have that. I find that so hard to believe, Lee.
It's very upsetting, Graham. It's very
This show's great to go like, no, the media's been awful from the jump.
I know. We continue to learn like, oh, none of this shit is new.
Yeah. And as a result, the union lost its membership throughout the 20s, and in 1924, the United Mine Workers of America district that included the Matewan lost its local autonomy because of the incident. As the years progressed, the union even itself distanced further from the Matewan massacre.
And so, you can show the movie poster. There was a movie about Matewan.
Wow. So it was depicted in the media incorrectly, and then throughout history, it's been kind of lost. And whenever it is brought up, it's already sort of like, oh, those crazy West Virginian miners went nuts. They're violent. They're violent nutties over there. And it's like, no, they were kicked out of their homes and were fed up.
Right. They have every aspect of their lives destroyed.
Yeah. So that's the story of the Matewan Coal Massacre and the lies surrounding it.
All right.
Now here's Lee Camp's takedown of the American lawn in segment number 2.
Takedown. This is episode number 15 in my ongoing series, Destroying the American Dream.
Everything you loved about America is a lie. That's what this whole...
So you're all familiar with this thing called the American lawn. And if you think it's just like a natural thing that has been around forever, you are incorrect. If you grew up in middle class as I did, or even I think a lot of people in lower middle class, then it's not just that lawns exist; it's that they're and you know I'm getting ahead of the article, but it's that they're viewed as like you have to take care of your lawn. Is your lawn up to par with others? You know, and there's a reason and a history behind that. So this article from Scientific American begins: the goal in America's lawn obsession is a sweeping exercise in conformity. This means you'll be showing the lawn and having it exactly the right height and everything means you're willing to care for it. It must be watered, mowed, repaired, cultivated. Lawns are expensive in many ways. So why do Americans place such importance on lawn maintenance? And it really is mostly an American thing. This doesn't mean grass doesn't exist in other countries, but the whole like lawn and the finely coiffed lawn is a very American thing. The state of a homeowner's lawn is important in relation to their status in the community. And I remember that from growing up. It was like, it's not just your own decision of like, of like, I'll take care of my lawn. I like how it looks. It was that you had to, if you didn't, then other people in the neighborhood would get annoyed. They would say you're hurting their property value. You're making it more difficult for them to sell their home or whatever because your lawn doesn't look nice. There's a whole like judgment thing that goes on in suburbia.
As a kid growing up in Madison, Wisconsin, I remember that like looking at the other neighbors' lawns, and we had this patch. We had our front lawn kind of went like this, and then there was a little downslope to the sidewalk. And this one part of the downslope was in the shade, and there was this like dirt patch. And my dad was like
losing his mind over it,
fucking going crazy, like putting the seed on it. He couldn't handle it.
Just sitting out there talking to it.
And just
like listen, motherfucker.
And it was such a thing, so much so that when I bought a house in the Valley in LA in 2000, it was a little 2-bedroom house, and the front lawn was very nice, and the backyard had some dirt spots in it. I was like, I can't, these gotta go. Like
every once in a while you realize you're becoming your father.
I know. It was nuts. When I got a house, like it was so nuts. I was like cleaning the gutters.
Did you solve the brown spot problem?
Well, I had a roommate. We were renting the house, and then when the house went up for sale and I decided to buy it, was when I was hosting the game shows. Back when you could buy a house in California for $200,000, those are gone. And I had a roommate with a dog, and this dog would run back and forth, and it was like, forget it. And then when he moved out and took the dog, I was like, all right, now we're going to get this.
It's you and me, Grass.
I will be victorious. And I think part of it is not to excuse the clear, like American propaganda, but there is kind of a guy.
But that grew out of the propaganda.
Of course.
The guy thing of like, I'm going to take care of my yard and my house and my family.
Well, I don't know. I don't think that's just propaganda. I think there is a like protect thing in like land, like.
Well, the protection, yes, but why would whether the lawn is brown or green be conflated as protection?
And your kids are going to be viewed as weakly, and they will be attacked.
Okay, I think we're getting a little too deep in Graham's psyche right now.
What kind of yard do you have? If this audience has a weak yard, I will come to your home.
This is the breaking point between me and Graham.
This is where the show splits.
Listen, Lee, the grass has to be green or you're a pussy.
If you want to have weak brown grass like some sort of spineless worm, then that's how you live your goddamn life, Lee Camp.
Graham, why when you were yelling at me just then, you called me dad? That was weird.
I've got green grass, Dad.
So the article continues. It signifies that care so having a nice lawn signifies that you care about belonging with the others, that you want to fit in. That you want the others to see that you are like them. A properly maintained lawn tells others you're a good neighbor. Many homeowner associations even have regulations, which is a whole other insane thing I'm not going to get into, but they're like legit, like they can fine you and shit if you have homeowner associations. Like
homeowners associations, I get it. I totally get it in a condominium, like in an apartment complex where it's like, we have shared expenses. I totally get it in that context. But when there's like neighborhoods of single family homes and there's a homeowners association with some Karen freak coming up going, your hedges are wrong. That's nuts.
It says in the bylaws that you can only have 3 flamingos. I count 4 flamingos out here.
Yeah, that is like, I would never live. I've had a home and I've lived in a condo. So I understand that the homeowners association, you always got to kind of deal with people, but I would never buy a standalone home in a neighborhood and then someone's going to come knock on my door and go, your hedges are off or something. And you're like, you don't have enough Christmas lights or whatever. I would be like, go fuck yourself.
And I'm like, what's the minimum number of Christmas lights I need to put up? And they're like, the thing is, we want you to want to put up that many crystals. the scene from Office Space. Well, what's the minimum amount of flair? No, it's not. I want you to wear the minimum amount of flair.
There were some problems with his TPS reports.
So then it continues. But lawns are a recent development in human history, having to do with altering our environment. The landscape that greeted the early European colonists in America had already been greatly altered by Native Americans for the purposes of hunting and fishing. These first colonists found no pasture grasses, as these were not native to the eastern seaboard. In New England, the grasses were mostly annuals, like broom straw, wild rye, and marsh grass, and had a lower nutritional value than the grasses of Northwest Europe. Livestock are not particularly picky at the time, picky when it's time to eat. So they went and ate all the native grasses, and when those disappeared, they started eating other things. So a lot of livestock died of starvation or eating poisonous plants when they got desperate. This created a rather stark landscape. So as part of the supply lists, in the settlers in the 17th century requested grass and clover seeds. The supply ships brought more than just the good grasses, however, which is how a lot of the weeds showed up, like dandelions, plantains, etc. Of course, the idea that dandelions are a weed and not, it's like, well, we decided that flower is a weed, but the green thing is the stuff we want. So it's all in our minds. But by 1672, 22 European species of weeds had taken up residence around Massachusetts Bay. But as animals overgrazed, the fields became barren. The market was ripe for grass seed once again, and several seed houses and nurseries were established. By the 19th century, grass was an agricultural crop, making it available for residential purposes. Before the Civil War, front lawns, however, were very uncommon. It's amazing. Like, part of the reason I wanted to cover this story is because it always amazes me that, like, every piece of our reality has often been like that for like 50 years. Like, it's not... You think this is just the normal way people live, and then you're like, oh yeah, no, that didn't exist until 50 years ago, and now it's everywhere, and you look psychotic if you don't want to have a lawn.
Yes. Yeah, and they've so just jammed it down everyone's throat, and then because Americans, historical reference goes back about 6 weeks, no one goes, right. Hey, they didn't have lawns 300 years ago or 200. No, nobody, and then most Americans don't travel. So when you go to other countries, everyone isn't like, look at my lawn,
Right. So before the Civil War, front lawns were very uncommon. Where they did exist, they were somewhat of an experiment by the wealthy in a new style of landscaping. It was like, look at this weird green thing I have.
Of course, it's some weird thing that rich came up with.
Yeah.
Oh.
And they didn't even have, back then, there weren't even that many like ball sports. So it wasn't like they had a bunch of croquet sets and slip and slides out there. There was nothing to... Between the American Revolution and 1820, very few Americans were traveling back and forth to Europe, obviously. So it was mainly the rich that would make such a trip. But European styles persisted as a cultural import. So the rich travel to Europe, they see what it looks like, they come back, they try and make theirs look like the rich in Europe, and then people in America see the American rich and go, oh, that's what I want to look like or feel like.
Right.
So European styles persisted and established as a view of a bastion of success. In the 18th century, the use of green, expansive spaces began to appear in landscape design in France and England. At the Palace of Versailles, a small lawn, which they called a green carpet, was installed. Thomas Jefferson, who was among the few to see these changes firsthand, was greatly impressed by the large swaths of green turf that were common to English country estates and tried to emulate that style at Monticello. George Washington hired English landscape gardeners to achieve a similar end at Mount Vernon. George Washington, I'll remind folks, was roughly the 10th richest person in all of America, in all of the United States at the time. So this is one of the richest people in the country being like, I want to look like the European rich, putting in a lawn.
Right. Right.
The popularity of Washington and Mount Vernon helped the contagion of the idea of the lawn grow as images of Mount Vernon were produced and distributed throughout the United States. This gave wealthy Americans something to copy and aspire to. Coming from a leader such as Washington, it lent credence to the perception that this was a break from the norm and unique to America. So the rich in America start trying to have lawns to look like George Washington, which they think he like came up with it on his own, and it's uniquely American. Today, there's a significant industry that exists around lawn care and management, from equipment to chemicals to seeds. Lawns require knowledge, time, and money. In these early days of the American colony, lawns still needed those things. And so a lawn was viewed as something that not just like middle class had, but uber wealthy. I mean, you had to have some serious money to have a group of people that would care to tiny little green plants all over your lawn, all over your front yard. Those with lawns were those who could afford help in maintaining it. For these reasons, lawns would not reach the middle class until well after the Civil War. Until the mid-19th century, most houses in America were built close to the street with a small closed garden in the back of the house. So, and streets were also far more communal than they are now because, yes, there was some horse traffic, but it wasn't like you were going to run over, and they weren't paved. So streets were a place to hang out, a place to have fruit carts and all those things. And there weren't like lawns and yards wasn't really a thing. So.
And of course, it's like it used to be more of a communal thing, and now it's this like stand away, get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn.
You know, my house is way set back, so the yard is like a distance from you. And
yeah, and I just realized this recently. Like, so growing up middle class, there was really little to no connection between us and our neighbors. And part of it is that unless you make a real effort, if you have a large lawn or yard, not even large, just mid-level, then the house is so far removed from the other people, then even your kids aren't like interacting with other kids. You're distant from the community. Yeah.
It's such an American, like, separate, me, lock your door, you know, and it just feeds all of this, like, who are you? Get off of my, you know, like all that stuff that is not prevalent in other countries. Just the idea of not knowing your neighbors is like, what? And
right.
I saw this interview with a woman from, I forget which country in Africa, but she just talked about, she said, the idea of not knowing my neighbors is like, it's not, you know, your neighbors, not just to be friendly, but because like, if my neighbor needs something, I want to help him because then he might have something that I need. Like we all help to help each other. We're interconnected. Like we're all dependent upon each other. So we need to know each other. We need to rely on each other. Whereas America's like, nope, do it myself. Go to the Costco and buy it, you know, and we should be working with each other.
We're probably more skeptical of neighbors and people. They're going to take my thing.
Yes.
Or they're going to disturb my thing. So I don't want to be I don't want to be friends with them because they might be coming for my stuff. I mean, it's a fear of greed because greed is so prevalent.
Yes. Because I want more and more and more. So I assume everybody else does. So I better lock it up and protect it and get a gun and all this other madness. It's just like.
Right. So the transition to lawns is tied to three major developments in the rise of American suburbs. The public park movement, which greatly influenced the first suburban communities on the East Coast. The adoption of automobiles and the rise of long-distance travel by train. Oh, yeah, I love this one. Long-distance travel by train in the 1920s pressured homeowners to beautify the fronts of their homes for the sake of the passersby. So before the 1920s, there weren't that many travelers coming through an area. It was mainly like you and, you know, your neighbors. And so you knew them back then, But when all of a sudden there were hordes of people coming through, it's like, oh, we got to impress the people passing by. We got to have the thing that George Washington had outside his house, so we look rich.
It's so funny because this story, while it seems just sort of kind of like we joked at the top of the show of like, oh, it's just sort of a tame, but it does feed into so many of the other things we talk about on the show.
Right.
And this show has an overarching theme of American exceptionalism and the American dream and the American way of life is all show and nonsense and insanity. I mean, it's like, I better make my lawn look good. So a guy looking out a train window has a nice, like, going by my house. Like, what?
Yeah.
And then, of course, and maybe you're going to touch on this, but then, of course, like again, here in California, when people have all these nice lawns, like this is a desert. No one should be having a yard. It's a waste of water. We're going to get into that.
I am going to mention that coming up. But yeah. So the third thing that enhanced the trends or pushed the transition was following World War II, the federal government financed low-cost mortgages, which propelled builders to create blue-collar tract housing. These establishments often featured lawns in an attempt to mimic upper-middle-class suburban development and attract residents. But even in the wake of these developments, it's important to note that lawns were still restricted to those with economic means, even into the 50s and 60s. Most Americans in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, urban factory workers, southern tenant farmers, and sharecroppers had no front yard. Railroad tycoons and factory owners saw their investments in businesses grow, and as such, they looked to accumulate material symbols to signify their prosperity. The front lawn became an exhibitive space. The awareness of lawns and their significance was put into everyday occurrence and conversation. To me, it feels very similar to like diamonds and like having to give a diamond for engagement is like, and we've talked about diamonds before, how diamonds aren't rare technically, and yet they're this show of wealth that now has been propagandized so that everybody, whether you have wealth or not, has to have the diamond ring for the marriage to demonstrate a wealth, whether you have it or not. And it's like, it's just a full-on propaganda effort. And so lawns actually have a lot of similarity to that. They have no use. They can't be eaten. They can't be used in really any way. It's not like kids can't play on something else. And yet they have become fully mainstream because everybody has to show that they have the wealth that is required for a lawn. The rise in economic opportunities meant that homeowners who were inclined to pursue a green carpet of grass could hire someone to attend to its needs, another indicator of success. Lawns continue to be markers for success. The sheer volume of resources, so now we get to the water, required to keep lawns alive is staggering and seems particularly wasteful in consideration of drought-plagued places like California. Lawns require the equivalent of 200 gallons of drinking water per person per day. Now, of course, that much of that can come from rain. It doesn't mean it's all dumped out of Evian bottles, but still, we are at a moment when the American dream, if it still exists, is changing. The idea of home ownership is untenable or undesirable for many. While green spaces are important, a large area of green grass seems to be a lower priority for many. With a growing movement that embraces a more natural lifestyle, there's a trend towards the return of naturalized lawns that welcome flowering weeds and subsequently support a more diverse entomological ecosystem. And someone smarter than I could also speak to what it does to the insect world and animal world, that these used to be places where plants could grow and the insects could, live off the plants and live with the plants. And now none of that exists. I mean, grass is useful just about not at all to most insects or animals. So,
yeah. That looks good from a train window.
Yeah. Looks good from a train window. That's all that matters. All right, I just got one last thing here. As of 2005, lawns covered an estimated 63,000 square miles of America, about the size of Texas. It's the most grown crop in America, and it's not one that anyone can eat. Its primary purpose is to make us look and feel good about ourselves.
Typical of an American showpiece. Bad for the environment. Costs us too much money.
Useless.
Useless, isn't sustainable. I mean, it's just like you just summed up America with the front lawn.
Yep. And in California, they even have there's companies that spray paint your lawn, right? Literally, there are companies that will come to spray paint your grass green when drought has killed it all.
I mean, I remember like our last big drought in 2015. We just came a little more. We had a really big one in 2015, 2016. And the city of Los Angeles was incentivizing, and other cities in California were doing this to get the fake grass, the turf, which is like recycled tires, to pay people to do that. And it was like, and some people were like, well, I'm not doing that. It's like, it's just typical of America. I want this thing. It doesn't fit the environment. It doesn't, but I want it. Yeah, but it's not good. But I don't care. I want it.
Yeah, but it feels like when I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, you thought Santa Claus was real when you were a kid too. So like, why don't we move on from a lot of stuff? Like, don't
get me started on Santa Claus.
Yeah. Oh. Well.
We did it.
If I do ever buy a house again, though, Lee, I'm going to have a fantastic yard. It's going to be really. No, if I got a house again, I'd put in. I would make it more natural. I'd put in the fake.
Yeah, I know. Like rewild it and actually make it a place that like animals and plants. I mean, animals and insects can show up.
Yeah. Not weirdos on trains.
But the lawn is better for a slip and slide.
That's absolutely true. And that's the key to all of it. And again, another American thing, just water fun. Just.
So next week, Wednesday at 8 or?
Well, let me see. Yeah, I can definitely do. Yes, I can. Next Wednesday, we'll back to our regular, solid, locked in stone time of Wednesday, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern.
Locked in stone until the week after. Got it.
Or it changes Tuesday night. Whatever. But it's definitely.
This is why everyone should listen to the podcast and not watch us, because the podcast, you can listen to anytime.
Yeah, if you just listen to the podcast, you're always like, thank God I don't watch these guys live and have to deal with this insanity. Like, but thanks for watching, everybody, or listening. Like, subscribe, share this out on your social media, give it a positive review wherever you're listening or watching it, and go to patreon.com/government secrets, where there are 33 bonus segments. Might be more than that because I misnumbered one. I think I forgot 30, or I numbered 29 twice or something like that. So
there's somewhere between 30 and 70 extra segments.
Yes. Our Patreon page is basically like the American front yard. It's
You mean useless and inedible?
Yeah, useless and inedible, and it kills insects. So that's what our Patreon page does. But looks good from a train window. So really want you to go to patreon.com/government secrets. And are we going live now, or?
That's up to you. I know you're tired from a move, so.
I really am.
You want to do extra next week?
We'll do extra next week.
All right.
But thanks, everybody.
But thank you, everybody. Go listen to those 30 extra segments. You have a lot of homework to do, folks.
When you sign up, you get all of the past stuff that's on Patreon. So you get that immediately. And it's like watering your lawn. You'll really enjoy it. And if you don't sign up for Patreon, we're going to send a private detective agency to and kick you out of your house. So that's how we're going to.
Yep. They will detect the best way to kick you in the ass out of your house. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens if you join the Patreon at Government Secrets. We actually own your house then, and we can kick you out if you decide to you don't want to subscribe anymore. So we're gonna
Don't
do
read the fine print, folks. Just sign up.
Just sign up. All right, buddy.
All right, man. I will see you next week.
Yes, go to leecamp.net and grahamelwood.com, everybody.
Absolutely.
And this has been Government Secrets, episode 124. Coal mine fun and great grass in America.
Later.
Bye. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will see you soon. Thanks, everybody. Yes, thanks everyone in the chat. I am a little tired. We'll talk soon. Bye.